I'm gonna just send it so I can put it on the web. Okay.
صلوات على
Starting from the cave, Hassan, where is Hassan? He's there to go. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa alihi.
So inshallah we're gonna start with the Quran.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Jazakallah Hasan, mashallah.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. What about I think the bigger one? How are you?
Good, good.
Yes, sir.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والشمس وضحاها والقمر إذا والشمس وضحاها والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء وما فسواها فألهمها فجورها وتقواها قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها كذبت ثمود بتقواها إذ انبعث أشقاها فقال لهم رسول الله ناقة الله سقياها فكذبوه فعقروها فدمدم عليهم ربهم بذنبهم فسواها ولا يخاف
اللهم صل على اللهم
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد. नारे सलावत।
बरौनी लज़्ज़ात में भी आवाज़ बुलंद सलवात।
अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला
जिब्रील सब्र शाहे ज़मन देखते जिब्रील सब्र शाहे ज़मन देखते जिब्रील सब्र शाहे ज़मन देखते रन में जुदाई सरतन देखते जिब्रील सब्र शाहे असगर हुए शहीद जो हाथों पे शाह
शहीद हो गए हाथों पे शाह के सरवर गुलूए गुंचदन देखते जिब्रील सब शाहे अकबर रगड़ के बेड़ियां खामोश हो गए अकबर रगड़ के बेड़ियां खामोश हो गए बेटे को मरते शाह ज़मन देखते रहे करबो बला से शाम तक आबिदे हज़ी करबो बला से शाम तक आबिदे हज़ी अब्बास नामदार का सर देखते रहे अब्बास के कटे हुए शानों को शाहिदी अब्बास के कटे हुए शानों को शाहिदी देखा न जा रहा था मगर देखते रन को चले इमाम तो ज़ैनब लिपट गई रन को चले इमाम तो ज़ैनब लिपट गई एक दूसरे को भाई बहन देखते जिब्रील सब शाये करते भी क्या इमाम वो अरे करते भी क्या इमाम वो खुद ही असीर थे फुपियों के बाजुओं में रसन देखते रहे जिब्रील सब रेशा है ज़मन देखते रहे रन में जुदाई
नाराय सलावत
صلوات على محمد وعلى آل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد.
Inshallah, we're going to start the program. We want to thank brother Dr. Sayyid Ali Naqwi. We are honored to have him with us today and in the next few days also. Allah bless him and his family, and please bless this side for the Fatiha for his marhumin and marhumin of all mu'minin and mu'minat. Also for the families who are sponsoring our program, Brother Haidar and Brother Hassan, inshallah. Love the Lord.
बराबी में खुदा खत्म अंबिया आवाज़ बुलंद सलवात बराबी में खुदा खत्म अंबिया आवाज़ बुलंद सलवात
Surah Fatiha for all mu'mineen and mu'minat.
MashaAllah. Sallallahu alaihi wa
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil azim. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa nabiyyina wa habibi qulubina wa tabibi nafusina wa shafi' dhunubina bil qasim Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. أما بعد قال الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنهم يرونه بعيدا ونراه قريبا. Mu'mineen and mu'minat, respected young people of this community, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What an accomplishment. When I came to this center, there was nothing but land here. And mashallah, what an accomplishment for your community. these are not the times to say congratulations, but these are the times to say, may Allah increase your barakat. It is an amazing accomplishment. Why are we here? And when I say that question, why are we here? I don't mean why are we here in the center. And I don't mean that why are we here in South Carolina. And I don't mean why we are here in the United States. I mean, why are we here in this world? Why are we here in this universe? What is our purpose? Why Islam? Another why question. Why Islam? Why Azadari? Right? Why Muhammad? Why Azadari? You know, we're not too used to asking why questions. We're very comfortable with how, what, when, where questions, right? Let me give you an example. Anyone who has applied for a college application here? Who has? I know you did, right? What are the easy questions? Who? Put your name. Where? Which campus do you want to go to? What do you want to study? What question? Then they ask you the main question. Why do you want to go to this school? Why do you want to pursue a certain major? Now you cannot answer that question easily. You have to take a step back. You have to think about it. What do they call it? They even have a name for it. They call it that give us your purpose or personal statement, right? Personal statement. Same thing with work. When you go for an interview, they ask you the easy questions. Those are the answers on your resume. Who are you? What have you done? What are your qualifications? And then they ask you the tough question. Why do you want to work with us? Right? And that's when you have to think. Then you have to think very, very carefully. It's not an easy question to answer. Another example about events. So when something happens that just is in your memory, some people, older people who remember the assassination of President Kennedy or 9/11, easy to answer questions about what happened, where did it happen, who was it, there were terrorists, there were victims, where did it happen, New York, Pentagon. But then when you ask about the question, why, then there are so many theories that come out. 20 years have passed and there are people still publishing books on that. Very hard to answer the why questions, right? Okay, why is it hard to answer why questions? Because when you ask why question, you have to go deeper and understand your purpose. What is the purpose of you doing something? You also have to think about your intent. For example, a crime happens, easy things, easier things. What happened? Where did it happen? But then what do they look for? What's it that investigators are looking for? Motive, right? What was the motive? Hard thing, because it deals with the why question. Why did that crime happen? Then proceed forward. And it's not only hard to understand, but sometimes we don't know the answer. So you need to go to a psychologist who can answer your questions about why you're thinking certain things or why you're doing certain things. Also in culture, human civilization all over, why questions are typically discouraged. A child says to his father, "Dad, why did you lie to that person?" "Well, son, I didn't lie." "Yes, you did. You did lie." "Okay, we'll go home and talk about it." Don't ask that question. See, these are hard questions. So, unfortunately, we go through our entire lives sometimes not asking the tough question of why. Why am I a Muslim? Why do I even exist? Why Azadari? And why Islam? These are the questions that I will answer for you based on my research, which I started doing several years ago, and which I would like to share with you. And I'll give you many examples today. And this will be a 3-day program, and we will do it in reverse order. Today, we will answer the question, why Azadari? Very important for young people to understand that. Tomorrow, why Islam? Day after tomorrow, why do I exist? Why me? So this is the order of questions. This is the order of coverage. And I hope that you can find answers in this. And I promise you that if you see this research over the course of 3 days, I believe that you will see that a remarkable difference has happened in your life, especially young people. Because sometimes we just, as I mentioned, we go through lives without thinking, just robotically doing things. And that reminds me of the word robotic, that machines never ask that question. Machines don't ask why question. Even autonomous machines, what do you tell them? Do something, when, run this routine, what time, at that time, where, get data from there, transfer the data over there, right? Machine is never going to ask you why. So humans ask that questions, but as I mentioned to you, that these are tough questions. So we will spend next 3 days focusing on these 3 questions. Why Azadari today? Why Islam tomorrow? And why me? Why I exist day after tomorrow, inshallah. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
As I mentioned to you that I promise, and that's a guarantee, that if you go through this will be a life-changing event. And because in our community, we have very, very accomplished ulama. We are so fortunate to have the type of research, and especially with younger people. I want to mention to you something that is a little bit off topic, but all this fascination with some other community having all these Nobel Prize holders, all this research, all these smart people, that's because people have not read the books. Our ayatollahs have written some remarkable books on politics, on political science, on economics, on sociology. The amount of research that these people have done and the kinds of books they have written, it's incredible. But Nobel Prizes, because those economies and those people in those areas don't make it, because they don't have the typical academic journals and all those things that we have here, so they don't include that research. But if you look at the performance potential, what some of those economies have performed, and some of the healthcare systems that they have been able to develop and deploy based on that Islamic ideology, you'll be amazed, you'll be shocked. And they will give a lot of Nobel Prizes over there. Doesn't happen. So this was, as I mentioned, a little bit off topic. But I did some research. I took a random sample of majalis, and I wanted to see that what are the typical topic coverage of majalis in our community. And my sample set was composed of only Urdu and English majalis. So maybe it would change. The results that I got would change if you add Persian, Arabic majalis, because I was not able to decipher the content of the majlis in Arabic and Persian, but at least in Urdu and English, I can share some data with you. 79% of majalis are focused on history. And within history, some are philosophical questions, some logical questions, some fazilat of imams, but 79% of coverage is history. About 12% on morality, ethics, and social issues. So 12% on morality, ethics, and social issues. Then some of them are contemporary social issues. Then about 5% on faru'e or obligations that we have, rituals, obligations, faru, so about 5%. Then a new category, very much a Western phenomena, UK, US, Canada, and now spreading over to Pakistan and India also, which is practical and professional guidance, almost focusing on pragmatic advice, giving you ideas about how to run your professions and how to make $1 million companies. I believe that's about 3%, which is coming out a little bit more. And then other relevant topics are about 1%. MashaAllah, 100% for all majalis have Masayib in them. So that is great news that we have as a community, we understand our primary obligation. But let's start analyzing the first one, the first category, historical majalis. History is repeated, and 90% of the content covered is about the era of the first caliphs, first 3 caliphs, and then a lot of focus on the 20 days, approximately 20 to 40 days of Karbala, events at Karbala. Now, but again, the questions that are addressed and the way history is narrated and told to us is almost always answering the what, when, where questions. What happened, in some ways a little bit about how questions also they covered, that how something happened, but mostly about what, where, when questions. There's an issue with that, because unless you ask the why question, you cannot begin to understand the intentions of the people on both sides. It's hard to understand the intentions and the purpose of the people, of the oppressors. And you would say that why is it important to understand their purpose and their intentions? Has the oppression ended in this world? Do you not have an imam today? Yes, he is in Dalit, but is he not there? So why not understand the intentions of the oppressors from all times, understand the distinction between what is oppression and what is not oppression. That's why history cannot be cut off from present and future. How many people here invest in stocks? I hope a lot of people here do. What do you use to measure the performance of a stock? You look at the financial statements. Financial statements are historical documents. They're about what happened, how a company performed last year, the year before. But you don't invest in a stock based on just the financial performance of a firm from the last year. You use it to understand how the firm will perform next year and the year after and the year after, right? History cannot be disconnected. It cannot be detached with present and future. And anytime we do that as a community, that we detach our present and our future with our history, it's not helpful. It's not helpful at all, because that history, Hussein, is a marker for us from the past, from the history. And Imam Mahdi is a marker for present and future. He's a marker for future and today for present. If we detach one from the other, then again, we cannot detach history from our present and our future. So we need to focus on how that history applies to today. That is important lesson of Karbala. Karbala was a movement. It was a movement. It was not the ending, it was the beginning. And you're living through, and we are living through the last chapter of that. Fatima, the last hope for this world, for the humanity. So we need to keep that in mind. And then even parents sometimes, they tell their kids that when they go to college and get some education, they say, well, get something action-oriented. Get something in which you can implement things. You can do things tomorrow. You can create value tomorrow. But when they bring their children to Islamic schools, they tell Malanas, teach them history. Well, you don't want them to learn history over there in schools, but you want them to learn history over here. Yes, history should be learned, but history should not be detached from today and the future. Our obligation is to our Imam today. And this is one of the core things, important whys of understanding Azadari. That Azadari, when we talk about history, it must be connected with not just the past, but today and future. That's first lesson. Second, we talk about morality, ethics, and social issues. 12% of majalis are focused on that. Okay, great. It's great to learn those ethics. It's great to learn those values that are being taught. But today, we're living in a world in which there are competing ethical systems. And the enemies of Islam, and especially the enemies of Tashayyu, you young people are the future of Tashayyu. You must understand the enemy. You are not in a system in which no enemy exists. There is an enemy of Tashayyu, and you need to understand the ideology of the enemy, of what they do. So we function, when we learn ethics, we talk about ethics, sometimes we fail to understand. That is this ethical system that I am standing for, that I am protesting for, that I am debating for, that I think I am a person who is creating an impact for this ethical system. Would our Imam approve that ethical system? That's the question. So when we talk about ethics, again, coming back to that, would our Imam approve those ethics that are being taught to us, that social media wants us to respond to, that sometimes we go and we make those struggles as our own struggles? They're not your struggles. You have very different struggles. And to develop an awareness about what your struggle is, again, you need to make a connection with your Imam. That's your struggle. That's your answer to the question of ethics. Third thing, they talk about obligations and furu'id. Very important issue. They tell us, again, do after prayers, important. Do Hajj, Zakat, homes, all of those things, important to understand those furu'id. But what was the day when Imam Hussein left Mecca? What was happening on that day? Does anyone answer? MashaAllah. Very
Hajj.
Exactly. Thank you. Hajj. Hajj is happening on that day. People can say, Imam Hussein, why did you leave? Why didn't you perform Hajj? That's Imam leaving the opportunity to perform Hajj in some ways. People who are wearing ihram did not follow their Imam. They decided to stay where? In Mecca. What was more important that day? To do Hajj or to follow your Imam? What if they would have come straight to Jannah, right? They would have been in Karbala. So what? Whatever happened, happened. But that's the difference between understanding Farouk without your Imam's blessing versus understanding them with your Imam's blessings. All of those things, Salat, Hajj, all of those things connection, tawassul with your imam, under your imam's guidance, connected with your imam of your time. That's the key, see? So when people are instructing you to do that, that's the why of Azadari. Everything should be connected with history, ethics, and we talked about furu, connected with your imam. Then, this is the new branch of the contemporary Western-based, or Western influence. I call them the Joel Osteens of Shiism. If you know who Joel Osteen is a Christian preacher who talks a lot about helping people out to connecting religion with material accomplishments, and connects almost every. He runs a big church. It's somewhere in Texas, I think. And right,
He's in Houston, yes.
yeah, great. So Joel Osteen style, giving you messages about teaching you how to make more money, how to establish yourself. Nothing wrong with making money. Nothing wrong with making money. That's good. But sometimes we have to ask the question if that's being done only because our minds have been conditioned in a certain way because we live in the Western society and we approach everything from a materialistic perspective, that type of communication appeals to us. Do we not need to make that distinction? That's when you ask the why question, right? Really, am I just listening to it because it gives me a justification to go tomorrow, make more money? Again, nothing wrong with making more money, but you cannot just think about that everything here that you learn here has to be in some ways pragmatic so you can make more money tomorrow. There has to be someone, I heard one of those contemporary speakers, very good speaker, mashallah, in a very large center presenting this theory and mentioned that there is a branch of Shias, people from a certain ethnicity, who are only 250,000 plus in the world. However, they have 16 billionaires in them. So when he was communicating that, I'm sure that he was trying to motivate the younger people that if you really want, you can become. But then I started thinking about that. 16 billionaires in Shias? Okay, let's take that at face value, that we have 16 billionaires from that community. Where's all that capital going? Did we see $1 billion fund got created that said, okay, any Shia entrepreneur, you guys, when you build a company, you will get investment from that? No. Did someone start a lobby group in America so that our voices can be heard? No. Okay. Did someone help the Iraqis defend when Karbala, when forces of evil, the terrorists, were only 12 miles away from Karbala? No. Then what's it worth to have 16 billionaires in Shias? That capital has to mean something. That, why do we see all this poverty in Karbala? Just go to Iraq. 16 billionaires can change the world. So if that capital is not being deployed for Imam, not worth it. That advice is not worth it. That advice that we should just change our mindsets and become all that pragmatic. No. Money, your risk, your Imam is Imam gives you that risk, Allah gives you that risk. That's what it's connected to. And when it comes in, you think of yourself as a conduit that you are giving it to someone else. You're passing, you're just a channel. No, it's not yours. Don't think it's yours. Also, that reminds me, don't use the word sponsor on your majalis when you do that. I say this to all Shias all over the world. Again, a Western influence. Someone, a young person here, anyone, can you do a quick search on Google and just do a search, sponsor, ? And read the definition, what it brings? Anyone volunteers to do that? Please. So,
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Anyone found it? Sponsor? You found it? You want to read it?
Yeah, so as a verb,
The first definition.
the first definition is individual or organization that pays some or all costs involved in staging a sporting or artistic event in return for advertising.
In return for advertising. Person who pays for a sporting event or a creative art something in return for advertising. No, you're not a sponsor.
There's also a verb that's provide funds for a project or activity or the person carrying it out.
Joe is being sponsored by his church.
Okay, well, in our case, we would use the word servant of. Service of our imam. That's who we are. We don't sponsor things. We don't exist. Again, 3 days from now, we will talk about my existence, the purpose of my existence. But as of now, today's knowledge that we have, we exist for our imam. And in that case, our reality is connected with Allah, which, inshallah, if we're successful, will be realized once the veil has been lifted. So going back to it, it's important to think of ourselves as not sponsors, but in service of imams. I suggest to all Mu'mineen and Mu'minat in all centers to change the terminology, because terminology has an effect. Terminology affects us. So, young people, the why question is for Azadari. Whenever someone asks you, and I'll give you two different ways to say that. One is a little bit, maybe it uses a bigger word. The goal of Azadari, the why of Azadari is that it protects Islam to facilitate the zuhud of our Imam. Again, it protects Islam. Azadari protects Islam so that it can facilitate the zuhud of our Imam. Okay, if someone asks you, why do you do Azadari? It protects, and I'll share some things with you, some tips that will enable you to analyze that yourself and think about it today, that how powerful Azadari is, how powerful this medium is. So think about it, that, and I will repeat the words again, protect Islam to, in other words, to help zuhud happen. It protects Islam. Azadari protects Islam. 1400 years it has protected Islam. When you say that Imam Hussein's Shahadat protected Islam, it saved Islam. There's all the prophets before him, before Prophet Muhammad. They brought their religion, sometimes during their own lives, sometimes right after their death. The exact message did not stay. The same thing was about to happen with Prophet Muhammad. Sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sallam. Same thing could have happened. But Imam Hussein's Shahadat, we believe that his stand, his qiyam stopped that. Was it just one day that stopped that? Was it just that few hours of battle and all of a sudden things turned around? Next day, Banu Umayyah was gone. Next day, the oppression was gone. Next day, Islam was restored. No, it was the beginning of a movement, and you're part of that movement today. That was the beginning. Again, set your minds to that Islam is being protected by Azadari. That is something you have to really, really in your heart understand that Islam is being protected by Azadari. I'll give you some more reasons. People go in and sometimes they say, well, Azadari is there for crying, for weeping, for mourning. What happened in Karbala? Azadari is for that. Very important to shed tears. Very important, remember that. Very important to shed tears. But tears of passion are not the same as tears of action. Remember those words. The Shayyo are expected to shed the tears of action. Example, the first major communication of Sayyida Zainab, Salaam
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
and Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
After the events of Karbala, after the day of Ashura, taken to Kufa. There are people who are there. Many people came to see who these rebels are, what's going on. Now imagine the conditions there. Their hands are tied, their arms are tied, right? Whips on their backs. You know that. You also know they were in chains. And you also know that their family members' heads are being held on spears right there next to them. Now, imagine this environment, and Sayyida Zainab, she gets up, she rises, and she starts her khutbah for the people of Kufa. Oh, you people of Kufa, you deceivers. She starts by those words, you deceivers. And I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the exact words because I could have read that, but very much close to it, you deceivers. Now, all of a sudden, there was silence. People started listening. Some people even said that we remembered from Imam Ali's times that this reminds us of the way Imam Ali used to talk. And during that khutbah, that's the first major communication, external communication, major. And there was complete silence. And when she tells them that what has happened, they start crying. People start crying. And if this Azadari was all about crying, it was all about tears, that should have made her very happy. People started crying. If the goal of the Azadari was only to cry, to weep, to shed tears, she should have been happy. The next words in khutbah, now you cry. She's telling them, now you cry. It didn't make her happy. Tears of passion, tears of guilt are not the same as tears of action. Being tashayyo is not first betraying your imam, doing treachery, and then feeling guilty and crying over it. That's not tashayyo. Tashayyo stands with their imam. Day one, first minute, first second that imam calls for it. Remember that. So when someone says that Azadari is about crying, yes, it is crying. But it's tears of action, not tears of passion, not tears of guilt. Hub is something else, muhabbat is something else, itaat is something else. Right? You can love someone, and you can, but not do itaat. Itaat is the key. The tashayyo is about itaat. So Azadari is also part of that. Let me give you another example. People say, well, Azadari is this social thing. It's a cultural thing. It's a cultural ritual, okay? Well, first of all, Prophet himself did Azadari. Prophet himself talked about Imam Hussein, and people, his sahabi sitting over there, cried. So, first of all, it becomes Sunnat-e-Rasul, right? Second, who was asking you to do that? Imam Zainul Abidin was starting what we call Azadari, launch of that. Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. Yes, and then every Imam after that, hold this Azadari, important, shed tears. Remember Karbala, okay? So think about this, that your Imam is asking you to do, and you're saying, and Imam, the word of Imam is the word of Allah, right? The Imam, Wali, directly connected to Allah. So he's asking you to do some cultural event. Think about it. There's no wisdom, na'udzubillah, in his thinking. There's no strategy. So he's just asking you to do just run this cultural event. No. That strategy was for today. that strategy from that time. That's why I was looking at, sometimes I look at du'as in this book from book on Imam Zamana's, all the du'as, and dua ahead, for example, this comes from Imam Zain al-Abidin, at least the book says. So what are they preparing you for? What is Karbala preparing you for? This final chapter where you are today, that's what Karbala is preparing you for. That's the why question, especially for young people. That's the why question. So when Imam Zain al-Abidin is saying, do this, that's not a cultural thing. That's fundamental thing in Islam. Why is he saying that, as I mentioned to you, it protects Islam? How does it protect Islam? Let me give you some examples. Anyone here who's sitting, what are the five senses? Younger people, anyone? What are the five senses?
Taste, touches, hearing, smell,
and visual, right? Five senses. To see, to hear, to touch, to taste, and to smell, right? Visual. When you go out, when you see Azadari, there's a visual element to it. The colorful flags, the taziyas that are out there, right? You see them in your Imam Bara here. Everywhere you see the visual element, powerful visual elements that the Sharia produces every year. Sounds, are there sounds of Azadari that you can close your eyes and you can hear them no matter where you are? Right? You can hear them. You can hear the nohas, the marsiyas, the speeches, all of them. So that's the second powerful communication that's coming in. Third, anyone here, I guarantee you that if you close your eyes and ask you to go back and smell the time, when you were a kid, about when you would go to a majlis, what the food smelled like, you'll be able to do that. You'll say, oh yeah, that halim, I know, depending on your culture, where you come from. Taste, same thing. You would know this food, tabarruk that you get, you can recognize, even throughout the year, when sometimes you would open something and you will start eating it, all of a sudden, a rich experience. Kids sometimes say, oh, this reminds me of tabarruk that we get in a majlis, right? That's your experience, human experience, rich human experience. Azadari is a very, very intelligent solution to protect religion. And so, the touch part, the ziyarat, go and you touch an alam, you touch the zari, put it on your face, the touch part. You got all five senses covered. The most powerful communication that any marketing, any branding can accomplish is to get all these five things accomplished. Right? What a powerful branding that is.
Nare Haidari!
Ya
Nare Salman!
So, how many majalis are held in a year? I calculate from two different methods. And I asked a third person, second person, to do the same thing, and we all reached to the same conclusion. 150 million majalis are held in a year. 150 million. We hold majalis in our homes sometimes. Just 4 people getting together. 150, only 30 million seconds or so in a year. Only 30 million seconds and 150 million majalis are held. How many Shias in the Islamic world there are? 10% barely, 10, 12, 13%. But your perception to rest of the world, the external world, is as if you're 50%. When they talk about Shias, they say Shias and Sunnis. Sunnis and Shias. They're in 9 out of 10 people are Sunnis. 1 out of 10 is Shia. Why do you get that perception, population of 50-50? Thanks to Azadari. Because Azadari gives you that voice. Azadari gives you that voice. If Hajj is that brings Islam to a central location, Azadari is what takes Islam to all locations. Every street, every home, every shop, every business, every place, every city in the world. Think about that. If Hajj brings Islam to a central location, Azadari takes it everywhere. That's your imam's wisdom. That's your imam's foresight. No, it's not culture. It's another thing I noticed. Demographics today. You saw these little children coming here and reading, right? Look at the demographic in Azadari. Everyone plays a role. We are so lucky to be Tashayyuh. I swear, we're the most vibrant and powerful community in the world. Wisdom of our people we follow. Huge. Children have a role. Little children holding alam, walking in processions, right? Ladies having their own majalis, having their own speakers. Which community has that? No community has that kind of, from children to older people. And the example parallels everywhere in Karbala. Bring a child's example, someone is there in Karbala. A woman's sacrifice example, someone is there in Karbala. You bring a teenager example, someone is there in Karbala. Someone in 20s example in Karbala. Someone 70-year-old, 80-year-old example in Karbala. Right? Such a vibrant community. The demographic that it represents, every single person has a role. Every single person has a role. Every single person is involved. The wisdom of your imams. The wisdom of your imams. Don't discount the powerful force of Azadari. Then the community that analyzes Quran more than anyone else. We're 1 out of 10, right? Every majlis has some ayat that gets analyzed. Every majlis has some prophet's sayings, hadiths that get analyzed. Every majlis has. So the amount of analysis, just the amount of analysis on those aspects, critical aspects of religion, because of Azadari. No wonder we have so much work that comes out every year in books, articles, in the research that goes on in our centers in Qom and in Najaf, and so many ulama, well-trained ulama that are sent all over the world. Well-organized, powerful community with the potential to create a powerful future. But again, it needs to be connected with your imam zamana. If it's not connected, yes, it's helping, it's protecting you, it's protecting Islam in some ways. The reason I mention that part is that the way Islam is encoded in the Sharia, in everything we do, now enemies cannot take it out. If they take out the visual part, the auditory part will be the voice part will be there. If they take out the voice part, the touch part will be there. If they take out something else, we know that we have scholars on one side, we have analysis on the other side, we have books on the other side. It becomes impossible. That's why the sustaining power is there, sustainability is there in the Sharia. So, but unfortunately, today, we have come to a point where the word Imam Zaman alayhi salam seems like has been, people have convinced us that it is some type of liability. Don't use that word. Teenagers will be turned off. Really? Why? Why would they be turned off? No, give them some practical things. What's more practical than serving their mom? Right? What's more practical? Give them some clues on how they can improve their lives. Yeah, serve your mom and you will improve your life. We'll talk about that 2-3 days from now. Also about centers. What are the mission statements of centers? Oh, don't put imam as a man. It will give people a different image. Why? Why would it give anyone a different image? Oh, that you're waiting for some imam. Because propaganda, enemies have done propaganda. They're putting those things in media and all that. Well, we're the most peaceful nation in the world. She is the most peaceful nation in the world. Why would anyone would be bothered by that? And it's whatever your ideology or religious ideology or religious beliefs are, they are. We don't need to be ashamed of that. Someone says, "Hey, well, this is, it turns Islam political." Okay, when some other religious people say that they're waiting for the arrival of some Messiah, or for example, Christianity, Jesus Christ, or someone says that we're waiting for someone else, or we're waiting a certain future event. We don't consider that as don't talk about that. That's political. But when it comes to us, we're like, no, let's not talk. No, we need to talk even more about that. Why? Because we cannot leave our Imam alone. We cannot leave our Imam without our assistance, unassisted. We cannot leave our Imam because it happened once. An Imam who was left alone, right? We know that. It happened. It happened when an Imam was left alone, and his mother loved him very much. His mother, Lady Fatima said, loved him very much. And the Prophet loved him very much. When Imam Hussein was born, the Prophet started crying. Lady Fatima says to the Prophet that, "Why are you crying?" And he said that, "I know it has been known to me that Hussein will be surrounded and killed in wilderness. Don't leave your Imam alone. Don't leave your Imam alone." That's the key message, is that you are today under the wilayah of an Imam. Don't leave your Imam. Stay with him in every way. Imam Hussein, when he leaves Medina, Hazrat Abbas comes to him, and so when they're moving, the caravan is moving, and says that there's someone who's following us. And Imam Hussein says, "Okay, go check who that is." And Abbas goes, checks, he says that, he comes back and says that is a small caravan of people. Hussein said, "Who?" He said, "Some Sahabi of Rasulullah." Imam Hussein said, "Okay, let me go talk to him." So he goes and he sees this person, a Sahabi of Rasul, old, weak, shaking. It's hard for him to ride a horse. And Imam Hussein says, "What are you doing here? Why?" And he said that Rasulullah told us that when my Hussein leaves Medina with his family, if any of you is alive, go with him. So I am here, my son is here, and a third person, I believe, his slave, he was there. Imam Hussein said, "Okay, come join us." And he said, "I can't do that, I will follow you." Said, "Why?" And he said, "Because ladies are there. Because ladies are there." So think about what happens, the consequences, when thousands of people who invite their Imam and they leave him. Thousands of people. That's why this concept is so important for us to understand and spend every second of our lives asking ourselves this question: are we helping our Imam today or not? We go to sleep with that. We wake up in the morning, the first question we ask, Prophet, once going somewhere, heard a child crying, and this child sounded like Imam saying, Prophet couldn't help himself. He went, he knocked on that door. Someone opened the door. He said, I heard this child crying. Don't let this child cry. He sounds like Hussein. Prophet once walking, sees kids playing, children playing, and there's one child he picks up and he kisses. And was happy to see that child. And someone said, asked Prophet that, why did you do that? Whose child is that? He said, I don't know. The reason I kissed this child is because he loves Hussein. He loves my Hussein. He's when they play, children play, he loves my Hussein. So again, this is the Hussein, the one who was loved by Prophet, who was loved by his mother. And I imagine that when Imam Ali alayhi salam and Lady Fatima salam, when they look at Imam Hussein as he was growing up, how would they see him with the knowledge that what would happen to Imam Hussein, the grand sacrifice that would be needed, the sacrifice that is the connection of the world with all the prophets represented in that one day. That's why when you read Ziyarat al-Waritha, what do you say? Imam Hussein, the inheritor of Adam, the inheritor of Moses, the inheritor of Jesus, right? You say that one sacrifice that was needed. So they are looking at their son, raising him, knowing that what he will go through. What he will go through comes to, again, another feeling. I think someone read, when you read that in the beginning, you said that the sister and the brother Zainab and Hussein, they looked at each other. Looked at you. We hear about words, what the words were said. Can you imagine that when eyes speak and the looks are exchanged, what would be that exchange between Imam Hussein and every pair of eyes he had to look into that day? His son's eyes, his Hazrat Abbas's eyes, all the previous experiences with him, all the growing up, Hazrat Zainab's, the last moments. Yes, I know what you will go through, Zainab. I know, but I understand. But you will be in charge now, eyes would have said. You will be in charge now, and I understand your suffering. You will be leader now. Don't leave your Imam alone. Don't leave your Imam alone. Not that day, not today, not in the future.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, ahí soltamos.
Karbala mein jawari wo सादात करबला सादात करबला तुमको करबला में जब आई वो बीबिया सादात करबला करती हुई फुगा बिखरी हुई सर पर बजा सादात करबला सादात करबला तुमको करबला में जब आई वो बीबिया सादात करबला सादात करबला एक बीबी रस्ते होनी है जाती है महल पर कहती चश्मे तर कहती चश्मे तर अब्बास से मिल आई तू पुरसा सदीना सादात करबला सादात करबला तुमको करबला में जब आई वो बीबिया सादात करबला सादात करबला घुट घुट के लाडली तेरी जिंदा में मर गए तुरबात नहीं बनी तुरबात नहीं बनी भैया वो कैद से कोई मर के भी जुदा सादात करबला सादात करबला तुमको करबला में जब आई वो बीबिया सादात करबला सादात करबला ये बयां करती है मेरे बेजुबान मालूम है अब कहाँ असगर मेरा कहाँ है बदला करबला सादात करबला सादात करबला तुमको करबला में जब आई वो बीबिया सादात करबला सादात करबला कुर्बान तेरे ऐ मेरे माजाई तेरे वतन मजबूर थी बहन मजबूर थी बहन जिंदा में मुझसे तेरी अमानत हुई जुदा सादात करबला सादात करबला तुमको करबला में जब आई वो बीबिया सादात करबला सादात करबला सादात करबला
السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله والسلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين والسلام عليك يا ابن خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا ولي الله السلام عليك يا معز الكتاب السلام عليك يا شمس الشموس السلام عليك يا النفوس السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن السلام عليك يا إمام المسلمين السلام عليك يا مسلمين السلام عليك يا أسلام رضي الله تعالى عنك وصلى الله وسلم على السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
يا حيدري
يا حبيبي. يا